Hello, I'm Nancy Hoyer-Evans, Curriculum Coordinator at iPathways. Bonjour, je m'appelle Nancy Hoyer-Evans, coordinateur du programme d'enseignement. I switched over to my admittedly limited French to jostle you a bit, make you feel like you needed to listen a little harder. There is a tsunami headed your way if you're an instructor who has English language learners in your classroom, and you need to prick up your ears and get your best boat ready. Right now, it is estimated that over 40% of students served by adult education programs are English language learners, also known as ELLs, and traditionally referred to as ESL, English as a Second Language students. So nearly half of your students in some areas of the country not only lack the scaffold of basic English, they do not have the infrastructure they need in place to learn the content of the curriculum either. If you pause for a moment to head on over to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and find the position English Language Learning Instructor, you'll see that the majority of adult education instructors who are teaching English language learners have no official training whatsoever in helping these students build their English language skills. This will not suffice. We must address those teachers' needs in order to further address the students' needs. I've been marinating in articles about this situation for a couple weeks now and feel like the most useful thing is to boil down the subject into some instantly applicable tactics for you teachers. Much of what the experts have diagnosed as successful teaching of these learners is what you're doing anyway. All successful communication scenarios begin with asking, what is the purpose and who is my audience? So, purpose first. Your purpose as an instructor of an English language learner is twofold. One, familiarize yourself and build the language scaffold for practical and academic English. And by academic English, we don't mean you want them to be a doctoral candidate. We mean that you're instructing them in a way so that they can succeed academically. Second, you need to teach the content of the various areas of study, math, science, and social studies, in order to accomplish this daunting task. Find out who your students are. Now we move on to that question, who is my audience? Here's what you need to do. Learn their name. What is their name? How is it pronounced? Ask them until you get it right. Resist the urge to Americanize their names unless you are invited to do so. What is their country of birth? Their family of background? These are important things. Home language, educational experience, reading and writing skills in their home language, their English language proficiency, which is also known as the ELP, what their scores are when they've tested in the past on this, what their interests are, and their plans and goals. To build up your empathy skills, try going online and watching a video in that student's language. Not to learn the language, but to feel what it's like to have the world carrying on in a code that you haven't cracked. Keep in the forefront of your mind how incredibly courageous students are who come to a country where they don't speak the language and who try to rise up through learning. Could you do it? Move somewhere else where your language is not the dominant one, go to school, try to maximize your potential with such a monumental challenge to overcome. As often as I've thought about moving to the south of France and living there, the idea of not having full language literacy has deterred me thus far. I have to suffice with vacations. And that brings me to one of the big points I'd like to make. Lack of language does not mean lack of intelligence. Once upon a time, ELLs were called ESL students, which stood for English as a Second Language Student. Whole departments at colleges and universities were dedicated to it. Here at WIU, it was called WESL, and the program was renowned for its cutting-edge philosophy in teaching and supporting the non-native English speaker. What has emerged, though, over the decades is the fact that most of these students were not learning English as a second language. Often it was their fifth or sixth. So the academics set about renaming the discipline the English language learner. What do we know about English language learners? Having a flexible profile in mind as you're creating your lesson plans may help with your instruction. These are the attributes, both positive and challenging, that we can attribute to ELLs. Skills, usually strong literacy skills in their native language. Academic skills and content area knowledge developed in the native language. Strong family support and commitment to their children's future. A strong interest in education. High levels of personal responsibility, resilience, resourcefulness, and a commitment to their own success. Now for challenges. Sometimes they have little or no formal schooling. They have high levels of mobility in moving between schools or areas, following work usually. Lack of access to effective, consistent language instruction, as in the case of students who have experienced bilingual education during one year and then English immersion the next. They have limited practice developing and using academic language. Personal responsibilities that occupy hours during or outside of school, such as caring for siblings or parents, working one or more jobs, translating for their families at doctor's appointments. You can imagine. As I look at these lists, what I see are the skills and challenges we often associate with our adult education students, whether they are monolingual or polylingual. Some of the following practices will benefit your ELLs, but because they are best practice in teaching, everyone in the classroom will enjoy improved outcomes. You can cultivate relationships and be culturally responsive. 1, incorporate learning language skills across the curriculum. Don't just have a language section and the rest of the time they're just adrift without support. Emphasize productive skills, speaking and writing, first and foremost, even though they're the hardest. The tendency of language learners is to want to listen and watch. And I get that, but we have to move them out of their comfort zone into the speaking and writing. Resist the tendency of these learners to be passive or receptive. SWIRL. The acronym stands for speak, write, interact, read, listen. These things need to happen every single day. Speak slowly. Increase the time you wait at the end of your question. A lot of times they're formulating or translating from the original native tongue into English, and it takes a little longer. And if you move on too quickly, you might miss an opportunity for them to address the question. Go multimodal. Use your visual elements to support vocabulary, concept, and content concepts. It's really crucial to know that we're visual learners, whether we're English native speakers or Ukrainian native speakers or whatever, that the visual transcends the difference in language. QSSSA, question, signal, STEM, share, assess. Ask open-ended questions to discourage one-word yes or no or maybe responses. Give students a signal that they can give you when they're ready to try to respond. So maybe there's if you're online, they turn their camera on if they're ready to respond. Or if you're in classes, maybe they close their book, or there's some kind of signal so that you're not going to embarrass them by calling them when they're not ready to respond. Offer students a stem or a branch of a sentence so they can repeat the construct and begin to understand and duplicate them. This helps with syntax. It helps them understand the call and response that we have in our language. So for instance, if I want to blank to college, I must blank. This can be less intimidating than having to come up with the whole construct for themselves. It builds confidence and it allows you to model correct verb conjugations and syntax. Share your own experiences with language learning when you've gone somewhere else or when you you pronounced a word wrong and people laughed at you because you'd only ever seen it in books and you hadn't had to say it out loud. Share this vulnerability with them. It will make it less intimidating for them to do the same with you. And assess how your teaching is going on an ongoing basis. Don't stop once you get it underway. Keep on assessing so you can pair existing knowledge with the new knowledge that they're gaining. Here's a skeletal checklist to improve access to English language learners. Speak slowly, distinctly. Use closed captioning on videos. Emphasize visual literacy. Music and math are universal, with graphs and diagrams and notes. Incorporate group projects and cooperative learning. Partner English learners with strong English speakers. Think about the student's native culture. Does it encourage students to share? How do you encourage participation? Engage in consistent routines. Patterns help alleviate anxiety, which improves brain's receptivity to new information. As I've said in a previous video, stress shuts down neuroplasticity. We don't want any of it in our language learners' lives. Develop a roadmap to the curriculum so students can picture where they are. Provide advanced outlines of lectures or discussion materials. This helps everyone in your class do better, not just the English language learners. Relate to prior knowledge. Be sure you identify what they already know. The brain works at looking at new information in terms of how it hooks into existing knowledge. The more we use this in our teaching, the better outcomes we have for our students. Fold in some hands-on activities, like science bingo or social studies Pictionary or Jeopardy for one of your subjects. Teach the root words when you're learning vocabulary. Go back to the Latin. Make a word wall. Post new vocabulary terms here, grouped by unit or a lesson. While there's no way to give you all the tools you need to be a truly effective ELL instructor in this short video, my wish is to inspire you on your journey. Empathy has been my guiding teaching force, and I encourage you to tap into yours. How frightening to be living in and trying to educate oneself to achieve the American dream in a culture that speaks a language that is unfamiliar. How brave are those who try. I'm in awe of someone who leaves everything familiar, sets goals, and hinges their wagon to the stars. These are our English language learners. They deserve the best we have to offer. To aid you in your journey toward becoming an ELL teaching superstar, I've included resources at the end of this broadcast. Bonne chance, éduquez et inspirez. See you next month. Don't forget to check out our resources on iPathwaysLearningLab.org. Take care.